They're the everyday products we know and love, and global consumer addiction to stuff is driving a thriving business in petrochemicals in the Middle East. The chemical products that go into solvents, detergents, fibers and plastics are all derivatives of petroleum and hydrocarbon raw material. So don't worry if you don't know your polymer from your oligomer or your ethylene from your propylene.
The petrochemical industry is in our daily life. It's in the packaging products, it's in the auto, it's in the household items. So you cannot miss the products of this industry.
The rise in demand from the East and the heavy impact of recession on the West has shifted the balance of power in a once dominated Western industry. SABIC is one of the world's biggest manufacturers of chemicals, fertilizers, plastics and metals, and intends to increase production to reach 130 million tons by 2020. The chief executive says the potential for growth in the Middle East is tremendous.
The GCC countries account for 11%. It is forecasted that by 2015 it will reach 15%.
The US and Europe were traditionally the leaders in the petrochemical sector, while oil-producing countries concentrated on the upstream. This is changing.
The petrochemical industry is a strategic cornerstone in the diversification drive for the oil and gas industry. And almost all the GCC countries, the oil-producing countries, are trying to diversify the portfolio of their economy via developing chemical and petrochemical industries. The region is emerging to become the center of gravity of this industry, given the access to favorable pricing for the feedstock, the proximity to the major markets, namely Asia, Europe, and the infrastructure, the world-class infrastructure that had been developed in the last couple of decades throughout the GCC countries.
This big demand, led by growth and consumer spending in China and Asia, is a trend plastics and chemicals company Borouge has benefited from. The company is a joint venture between Austria's Borealis and the Gulf-based ADNOC, the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company.
In one of the industry we serve, automotive, cars in China, the business there was growing something like 30-40%. India is exactly the same situation. If you look at the Middle East here, also very, very strong growth. So at least in the market segment, which we are focusing on, we see some very interesting good growth. And of course, if we look further on with the improvement of living standard, particularly in the emerging countries, Southeast Asia, China, India, we see a lot of interesting potential actually.
Borouge intends to increase capacity from just over 500,000 tons to 2 million tons this year and to 5 million by 2014. That same boost in growth has encouraged another Saudi Arabian petrochemical company to look at expansion plans. Tasnee is already a major global player.
I remember when I got first in the industries in 1984, we started up a plant of 140,000 ton per year polyethylene when I was with SABIC. Now the same plant is producing 500,000 ton. So producing millions of tons I don't think it's difficult.
The opportunities for growth may be tremendous, but they're not without challenges, particularly in the wake of the recession.
Challenges are external, internal. Externally, it's the condition in the export market, the major markets, and internally securing financing, credit for sponsoring or funding the mega projects is becoming not difficult as well as more costly. The cost of financing is becoming more than in the old days. Having said that, there are governmental funds that fill this gap, and but nevertheless, this is a challenge for the industry, because this industry is capital intensive.
Like many evolving and growing industries in the Middle East, analysts say such big industry potential needs better management to grow and prosper.
There are a couple of challenges, right? Definitely one of them would be the way that the petrochemical industry need to manage their risk. At the moment, an industry which is like about maybe $2 or $3 trillion worth in terms of sale does not have a proper risk management tool, which I think for banks looking at this industry, it's something that they do not want to touch.
In Abu Dhabi, the petrochemical sector is part of the country's economic diversification plan, with deep pockets to support the growth of the industry.
Well, we are very lucky. We have two shareholders who have a very long-term vision of the industry. So from that point of view, we are in a very, very good hands.
The GCC is currently producing about 8% of the global petrochemical demand. Now, this is an industry that's been really hit by the recession, but the Gulf countries, they've stepped in, taking unique advantage of their geographical location, the fact that they have relatively cheap and affordable access to the natural feedstocks, and the growing market that they're seeing emerge in Asia. By 2020, Gulf producers say that they can manage about 20% of the world's petrochemical demands. This proposed boost in production may sound ambitious, but the head of the Gulf Petrochemicals Association says he sees a return in appetite for products and that growth in demand is evident.
Despite the current environment, the momentum of adding more capacities and diversifying the product portfolio is gaining momentum. We envisage that in the next 5 or 6 years, the added capacities will be in the tune of 85% of the current capacities. And in other words, we will be adding close to 53 million ton in the next 6 years up to the year 2015. And this will bring the total capacity of petrochemical and chemical in the Gulf region to over 115 million ton per annum, which represents 16% of the global petrochemical output. And this is significant considering the short time frame.
Manufacturers are busy gearing up to meet that demand.
The key market for us is Middle East here. Obviously, a lot of interesting development going on. China is obviously a key market that nobody can overlook. India is another one. And a lot of little markets in Southeast Asia, like Vietnam, is also showing some very interesting development. Overall, we are quite optimistic overall in the whole region that we are serving.
The expansion is the name of our game, as you know, and especially in the petrochemical industries. If you really don't expand, you're considered to be dying.
Industry projections are looking good for this once cyclical business, and analysts believe that the Middle East is well placed geographically and with cheap access to resources to take advantage of the shift.
In 2008, about 50% of the production of, let's say, plastics or called polymers is done within the Asian region. Right? From 2012 onwards, you probably see Middle East coming in and taking over that. And this will continue until 2020, where we anticipate with all the huge capacity coming from the Middle East, this is going to be the region that is going to be the main player.
As part of the economic diversification plans of all the oil-producing countries in the Middle East, the petrochemical industry is a natural extension of business. The petrochemical producers in the region are ready and eager to finance and manage the shift in demand and to focus on becoming the most important global players in a new and expanding and lucrative product market.